This game features a devastating attack. It's really super GM elite chess at its best. So Alireza Firouzja has white here. He's playing world champion Magnus Carlsen with black. This is the Banter Blitz Final 2020. Online chess, 3 minutes aside. It's 6.5 each. Magnus has just lost against Alireza, who had black. Now Alireza's looking to press home the advantage with white, take the lead in the match. So we had pawn to e4 from Alireza, now pawn e5, and now knight to c3 instead of knight f3. He goes for these kind of Vienna game systems, and knight f6 from Magnus. So bishop to c4 came, knight c6, pawn d3, and now Magnus immediately goes after the bishop pair with knight to a5. So Alireza drops back. We have a captures here, and although Magnus has picked up the bishops, he's lost a bit of time. So pawn d5 came, immediately striking at the centre. Alireza continues developing, Magnus captures, and Alireza now takes here. And it's a really nice idea because after Magnus takes on d3, Alireza simply castles, and now you can't take another pawn, or the queen captures here. After the king takes back, we go to Forktown on f7. So Magnus didn't take the second pawn, he just went bishop to e7 here. We had knight takes on d3 and castles. And Magnus is wondering why Alireza's playing so quickly here, but Alireza's quite familiar with these Vienna game positions. He played it quite a bit in Blitz chess in 2019. So after castles, we had queen f3, c6 from Magnus, pawn h3 from Alireza. The rook came to the e-file, and now rook d1 lines up against the queen. Now, although the queen is being x-rayed, Magnus first goes bishop to e6, completing his minor piece development, and he is offering Alireza the option of knight f4 or knight c5 to attack that bishop. After, say, this one, we could have queen c8, you pick up the bishop pair, game goes on. But instead of this, Alireza elected to play more slowly with bishop to e3, just get his minor piece development done, and now after queen to c7 from Magnus, you're not actually threatening to take this pawn, because after rook takes, bishop takes, b6 actually traps in that piece and you're losing it. So we didn't have takes on a7, bishop f4 was played instead. It hits the queen, which dropped back. You could actually have gone bishop to d6 here. It looks really weird after takes to put the queen on the line of the rook, but there isn't actually an immediate way to take advantage of this. So okay, game would have gone on from there. But queen c8 is quite normal. It looks scary to put your queen here. And now I really like how Alireza proceeds here. So if you play a bit casually here, say with knight to e5 for example, well then knight to d5 comes. You're hitting this bishop, and say you preserve this bishop with, I don't know, bishop g3, well now black can take here, and this is an important attacking piece for white that you've just chopped off the board. It wants to come to e4. So Alireza sees this stuff, or he has instincts on this stuff anyway, so he goes bishop to e5 instead. Now Magnus could go knight d5, probably a better move, but he goes knight d7. Now the bishop drops back, and here Magnus's instincts let him down. So he should really start challenging these minor pieces that are pointing towards his king dangerously. Let's say with bishop f6. This is what Alireza was looking at. But instead of this, Magnus goes b6, preparing c5, but he's just given Alireza knight to e4. And he instantly notices it and says, why am I playing so hesitantly? I'm doubting myself. He's getting quite tilted at this point. So after knight e4, we had pawn to c5, but the bishop now drops back to c3. That square was vacated by the knight, and now look at this attacking setup. And Alireza says, right, I need to go on the attack now. My pieces are wonderful here. So after bishop to c3, Magnus is getting nervous. He goes pawn to f6, trying to blunt the attack. The knight now came to f4, hitting the bishop here. It dropped back into f7, and now there are a couple of good moves. You could start with knight to d5, but Alireza goes rook d2, very simple chess, preparing to double, and he's putting the pressure on Magnus on the clock. So we now had the knight coming back to f8, looking to defend the king, looking to come into e6 soon. The rook doubled on the file. We had queen c7 from Magnus, connecting his rooks, and now queen to g3 was a nice tricky little move from Alireza. And here Magnus is getting quite frustrated. He says, I can't think, I can't find the move. There's a threat to now take on f6 twice and use this pin against the king. Now the best move here is actually knight to e6, but it's not easy to see this because it looks like white can just crash through, take on f6. After bishop recaptures, you're taking with the bishop, but actually then you have queen takes on f4. This knight not only supports the queen, but also holds the g7 square against checkmates. So really difficult to see this kind of stuff in blitz chess. Magnus was down on time. So after this move of queen to g3, instead he played queen c6, but he knew this was lost, he just couldn't think. Alireza crashes through, he takes on f6, the bishop recaptures, and now you don't want to take that bishop back straight away. First you play a Zwischenzug, an in-between move. Can you find it here? And if you're enjoying this video, do consider subscribing to never miss another in the series. So here Alireza flicked in, rook to d6. You hit the queen, you hit the bishop on f6, so the queen jumped away. Magnus now picked up here, and the knight came into g6, defending against the checkmate. So Alireza now goes knight h5, best move, you attack this g7 pawn, and still you can't capture, or now we have this fork, you're picking up the queen. So after this knight h5 move, Magnus chopped off here, we had takes on g7, and now the best move here was queen to f5. Magnus missed this, but he's very low on time now. So you hit this knight here, and if that moves away, then you can pick up the bishop with the king. So best here would actually be playing the rook up the board, attacking the queen, defending the knight, but you do give an exchange when you play like this. Now if you recapture here, we've got this fork on f6, but this is the best way for black to play. At least you've got two rooks for the queen. It's still tricky, but white is better. But we didn't have this move queen f5. Magnus barely has seconds on the clock. Instead he took on b3 with the bishop. He hits the rook twice, but actually Alireza ignores it. He goes bishop to c3. If you take this one like this, bishop recaptures, well white is still doing really well after knight to f6. It's completely hopeless. So after bishop c3, Magnus goes rook e7, the knight checked on f6, king f7, Alireza picks up here, and now Magnus brings his rook to the e-file, doubling, looking for counterplay. But knight g5 check comes, the king moves away, and now knight e4 opens up new attacks on this g6 knight with these two pieces. So Magnus takes here, Alireza captures on g6, the king sidesteps, and now he brings this other rook down. We have rook to f7 trying to give the king some cover, but simply this rook comes to the f-file, king e7 was played, and now the final move of the game was captures on f7. If you recapture with the king, then this is simply mate. So Magnus is disgusted with his play. He says so himself, and he says, I need to get out of my own head. So can he come back fighting, set up a final game showdown? Do tune in on the next video to find out. To see the whole playlist of videos, click here, and subscribe to the channel. Do see below, never miss a video. Thanks for watching, see you soon.